Good morning, everyone. We're going to get started here. We know that some people are still coming in. We'll make sure you have plenty of time for those conversations during the next break and during lunch. So if you need to, take a note of the person you still need to chat with or the topic you want to bring up with them. But as our next panel takes the stage, if I can just get everyone's attention here, we are starting our next program. So our next panel is Meet the New Members. Just a reminder, those here still chatting in the audience, we're starting our program. Thank you. So let's get to our second panel, Meet the New Members. State Senator Molly Cook, Democrat of Houston, is a sixth-generation Texan born and raised in the Houston area. She is a registered nurse, earning her nursing degree from the University of Texas at Austin and her dual nursing and public health graduate degree from Johns Hopkins University. As an ER nurse and grassroots organizer, she advocated for the health and safety of her neighbors. I'm sure some of that advocacy will come up during today's conversation. State Representative-elect Don McLaughlin, Republican of Uvalde, formerly served as mayor of Uvalde, elected in 2014, and in office during the 2022 Robb Elementary School shooting and other crises that are likely to be addressed. One of the priorities that Representative-elect brings is how we learn from local management of crises, including immigration, winter storms, COVID, and others from his tenure in office. Moderating our conversation is Renzo Downey, lead writer of The Blast, the Texas Tribune's premium politics newsletter. Prior to joining the Tribune in February 2023, he worked as a state government and politics reporter and a newsletter editor for Florida Politics. We'll have about 15 minutes for questions after the conversation here, and with that, I turn the program over to Renzo.
All right, well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. We've got an exciting panel today, and we've also got an exciting session that's coming up. And here with us, we've got two of the new members here, one who's been sworn in already, one who's about to be sworn in. And they're going to be part of a session that has been years in the making. And we're going to get into what these new members hope to make of that new session here. So already got a little bit of an introduction, but I'll just add that Senator Cook was sworn in earlier this year after current Houston Mayor John Whitmire resigned his seat, and Senator Cook had to win two, arguably three races to get to this point. Three races?
A total of four, actually.
Four races to get here. And Mr. McLaughlin, former Uvalde mayor, he won a seat that was held by Democrat Tracy King. So that was one of the two flips that Republicans made in the state house. So with that, we've got 32 new House members this coming year. That's out of 150 House members. 24 of those new members are Republicans. 15 of those took out incumbents on their way to getting into the legislature. That is quite a sea change within the GOP caucus. And with something like that, where the grassroots was heavily involved, as a new member coming in, do you see that election, both in the primaries and in the general, do you see that as a mandate for this new class of GOP members to really make some changes within the House?
I do. One of the things that I see, I look at it as a mandate, but I don't look at it as a Republican mandate or a Democratic mandate. I look at it as a mandate from the people of the state of Texas to say, hey, let's go up to Austin and let's get some things done and quit the infighting and sit down and see if we can't work together and get good things done for the people of Texas. That's what I see.
So you don't see it as any different than the mandate that the more senior members should have at this point?
I don't. I mean, the only reason I ran is because I'm tired of the my way or the highway attitude on both sides. And it's time that we sit down and have a conversation. We're elected by the people of Texas and our constituents in our district. And to me, that means I need to roll up my sleeves and sit down at the table with anybody and have a negotiation. I'm not going to get 100% of what I want. They're not going to get 100% what they want, but we ought to be able to find something in the middle that works. And I think that's what people in Texas want to start seeing.
And part of what the House is going to be pushing for is, it sounds like there's going to be this renewed push for school choice, school vouchers, education saving accounts, whatever you want to call it. And that's one of the policy provisions that the House is going to be pushing for now. And you've also got this speaker fight that's happening. It's going to be coming to a head this week with the GOP caucus meeting on Saturday. And you've supported David Cook, who's challenging Speaker Dade Phelan in that race. Do you still stand by David Cook, and do you believe that he has a path to the speakership?
Well, right now, I don't think either candidate has the votes to pass. I don't think they have the majority of the votes. I don't think David has them. I don't think Speaker Phelan has them right now to get that path. So, we have to sit down and keep an open mind and sit down and listen to what each one has to say, and hopefully we can come out of there with consensus and come together and not be torn and drag this out for a month and a half.
So if Speaker Phelan wins that caucus vote on Saturday, do you plan to support him and work with leadership come January?
I'm going to support and work with anybody that's in a position. Like I said, I didn't come up here with an agenda. I don't have an agenda. I want to do what's right for the people of my district and the people of the state of Texas. And, I represent one of the counties that I represent is Webb County. It's one of the fastest growing counties there is. It's 355,000 people now. South Laredo is growing. We just got approved for another international bridge to come in, which will go in my district in South Laredo. So, I mean, I want to be fighting for what I need in my district, and I'll work with anybody that I need to or is willing to sit down at the table to get things done.
Now, Senator Cook, you're jumping into a very different environment. It's, the Senate is led by Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, and that means that there's conservative leadership from the top down, very streamlined, and you're going to be operating within the minority. And you've said that you plan to use your position to take on Governor Abbott, take on the Lieutenant Governor, take on Attorney General Ken Paxton. And you also come from an activist background, correct? And your predecessor, John Whitmire, he was known for working with the leadership, being very bipartisan. Is this going to be a change, a tack for your district to have you in place now?
I love this question, and we get it all the time. And I will say I'm an emergency room nurse. First and foremost, above everything else, I'm an ER nurse. And when I walk into my ER, I treat every single patient that comes through the door, regardless of their party, regardless of whether or not they vote. I work with all kinds of physicians, all kinds of nurses, and we use teamwork to achieve life-saving outcomes. And that's exactly what I'm going to do in the Texas Senate. And my predecessor is known for working across the aisle and also taking a stand on his principles when he needed to and when the district needed him to. And the best advice that every senior person tells you when you walk into the Texas Capitol is vote your district. Take care of your district. And I'm so excited to hear you talking about it that way. That's exactly how I feel about it. How do I take my nursing practice from one patient at a time to 950,000 patients at a time or 30 million patients at a time? And I'll be proud to, again, work with anyone who's in there and wants to work on life-saving policy.
So you don't see yourself taking as much of a combative approach necessarily. You're just going to stand when you need to.
So funny how people have ideas about who's walking into these chambers and who they're going to be. Every single day is new. Every single day you're learning. And we're just the nicest senator that you've ever met. That's what's coming across. The Democrats have been welcoming. The Republicans have been welcoming. We'll stick to our values. We'll maintain our principles, and we will do whatever we can to pass life-saving policy.
Yeah, that's a good point that you make. That we have, we've come to ideas about what this new class is going to look like. Do you think that the incoming class is some monolith, that they have a cohesive set of ideas? Because from the outside, it seems like the group is pretty unified.
I would say yes. I mean, one of the things that I think you're going to see this freshman class attack is the budget. Texas government keeps growing and growing and growing, and I think you're going to see. I think one of the questions we got yesterday when we were there, well, they asked, one of the freshmen asked, well, when we start the budget, where do you start? Well, we bring last year's budget in and say, this is where we start. Do you want to add anything to it? Instead of starting at zero and figuring out what we need to do and where we need to cut and what we need to say. We're very blessed right now and have a surplus, but that surplus isn't always going to be there. So we need to prepare for that day, and we need to cut where we cut. We need to combine where we need to combine, and be more fiscally responsible.
And when you come in as new members, you're coming in with a fresh set of eyes to a process that's gone on for decades. What are some things that you think you can change with a fresh set of eyes?
I think that's a really valuable way of looking at it. On a healthy hospital unit, you have senior nurses, kind of mid-service nurses who've been there for a medium amount of time, and then you always have new grads. And the new grads are energetic. They've got the freshest research, and the kind of medium level nurses follow all the rules. And you've got your senior nurses that kind of know all the hacks and know how to do everything. And by that combination of really sticking to the freshest data, but also knowing that you're relying on institutional knowledge and seniority to kind of make this really complex system run. It's exciting to be able to bring those fresh eyes, but I think we would be foolish or remiss not to look towards some leadership for their expertise and their seniority, which is extremely valuable in a system that's existed for this long and serves this many people.
And I would agree with that. I mean, you've got people that have been here, have got a lot of experience. I'm a freshman legislator coming in. I'm not going to be able to change the world. I realize that. But again, I'm here to learn. I'm here to. I'm not bashful. I'll call it like I see it when I see it. I'll try to input ideas when I can. But at the same token, I'm here to work together and try to move forward, not backwards.
One thing I've heard from some new members is on the GOP side in the House is that with this civil war that people are calling it within the GOP caucus, that the new members have been asked to step up, that they are participating in these early conversations about the speaker. And I'm just curious if you feel like you have been welcomed into that, or if you were more pushed into taking stances on the speaker's race, on the state of the House before you've gotten into the House and involved and familiar with how things are working.
Well, I mean, sure, I've had many phone calls and many things, and yes, I did early on agree with David Cook being the Speaker of the House. But when it gets down to it, I'm going to go in there and listen to everybody whether it's Speaker Phelan, if it's David Cook, or if it's another person. I'm going to listen to what they have to say and how they want to unify this party to get something done and not fight and not have the infighting in that. And so that's what I'm going to do. But yes, I mean, we've had the calls and we want you to vote here, we want you to do that. But, I'm going to, as the senator said, I'm going to vote my district, what I think is best for my district. And that's how I'm going to look at it.
And now I'd like to talk a little bit about the Robb Elementary shooting that, as we discussed earlier, you were mayor when that happened. And as mayor, you took on a national presence, criticizing state officials for, specifically within DPS, for accusing them of leaking specific angle to try to make themselves look better. As we go into this next session, what do you believe your role is going to be for the Uvalde community as you try to guided them through, now guiding them past that tragedy?
Well, the sad thing is we're fixing to come up on the third year anniversary. That community still doesn't have answers. DPS is still holding information they haven't released. Our district attorney in Uvalde still holding information that you weren't released. You indicted 2 officers, a school police chief and one of his subordinates, in a deal out of 341 officers. Look, there's no question there was a failure that day of the leadership in law enforcement, not just the Uvalde School District, the Uvalde Police Department, every agency. And there were, contrary to what everybody believes, I was on that scene within 15 minutes. I was on a walker. I just had hip surgery, but you had FBI there, you had DEA there, you had U.S. Marshals there, you had Homeland Security there, you had Border Patrol there, you had DPS. There were numerous agencies there. The failure was nobody took a command position that day. So hopefully what we can do is, number one, for my community, is that we can hopefully this tragedy never happens again. Sadly, it probably will somewhere again, but hopefully we can learn from those lessons, from those mistakes that day. I mean, those parents should never have to bury their children. It should be children burying their parents. And so my heart still breaks for those families, and they still don't have the answers, and we still don't have closure. I mean, that's just a wound that's still festering, because about every 6 months, somebody comes up with a story or a new lead or a new this, and it opens it all up again, and the frustration's there. So hopefully we can get the answers that we need. Everybody needs to be big boys and lay their cards on the table and take your lumps. I mean, I don't know any other way to put it. You made mistakes that day. Own up to it and be done. As far as the DPS, the narrative of the story with the DPS changed 5 times in 3 days. I mean, that's where I got frustrated. I mean, and still frustrated to this day. I mean, when you listen to their narrative and so forth, it's still like they want to blame the Uvalde Police Department and mainly the school police department. And yes, they're culpable in it and that, but every agency was there. You know, they said their first DPS officers didn't get there till 11:52. I can show you tape where they were there at 11:36 and 11:37 and 11:38 and 11:41. So, I mean, you know, and some of them were senior officers. I mean, some of them were lieutenants, some of them were captains, some of them were sergeants. I mean, like I said, to go forward, we just need to know, release the information was there so these families they're never going to get over the loss of their child. But as long as you don't have the answers or the truth of what took place that day, you're not going to get closure to it.
And now that you are going to be serving within the legislature, do you think the legislature should change? How do you think the legislature should change how they approach specifically the Robb Elementary case and school shootings more broadly?
Well, I mean, from my standpoint, you know, there's a big push again to change the age and so forth. Changing the age is not the answer. I mean, there may be a piece to the puzzle there, but until we start addressing the social issues that bring this on, till we address the violence in Hollywood movies, when you play video games where kids taught to shoot people and kill people all day long, and they play it for 10, 12 hours a day, you desensitize what life is. They have no concept of what life is. Then we have broken families. You know, we have grandparents that are raising their kids because the parents they're in jail for drug use or they're strung out on drugs, so the grandparents are having to raise. And then you add mental health to this. You know, there's no question that this guy that did this shooting had mental problems, and we missed it somewhere. You know, I advocated when I first became mayor, I had 3 people within 18 months, 3 young people commit suicide. We went out looking for help for the community. We had none. We had 2 mental health counselors that covered a 5-county area. If we saw them once a month, we were in our community, we were lucky. So I advocated, and you know, the tragedy is the Robb school shooting. There's finally going to be a mental health hospital built in Uvalde, Texas, that will have 16 beds for youth, 16 beds for adults, that will serve 31 rural counties, and will have an outpatient service there too. Will be the first in the country. that we can hopefully get something done for a change. Because every politician gets on stage and they all talk about, oh, we're going to champion mental health, we're going to champion this, and we're going to do that. And you know what they've done? Nothing.
And Senator Cook, you're also going to be involved in whatever conversations happen around Uvalde in this coming session. What do you think the legislature needs to change in their approach?
And with great due respect to the representative-elect, who has a very different perspective of what happened that day than I do, as an emergency room nurse who sees kind of the chronic results of gun violence in our societies, I support, a myriad of widely popular policy changes that I do think Texas needs to take. Things like universal background checks, things like extreme risk protective orders, things like, and in my opinion, raising the age, especially around certain assault style rifles. So yeah, I'll have an opportunity to participate in those conversations from the perspective of a healthcare professional, which I just think is very valid and credible. And I do see these things on practically a daily basis. And it's not just those high acuity moments where somebody's life is on the line, a trauma situation. There's also, you see folks who live with bullets in their bodies for their entire lives. They can't get MRIs ever again because there's metal inside their body that won't ever come out. And I think that's just a really powerful illustration of what gun violence is doing in our state and in our nation. It's living inside of us right now, and we do need to make some changes in the interest of public health.
And Mr. McLaughlin, you've also said that while you don't necessarily trust state officials, that I believe you said that the law enforcement within the community, you trusted what they were saying more. Is that, am I misrepresenting what you've said?
Well, the report we got that day, everybody came out, the Uvalde Police Department gave that report. The report that was given to the governor the day after was given by a senior DPS officer. And the deal there. Do I believe that we have been transparent as far as the city of Uvalde and the police department? While I was mayor, we tried to make sure. I mean, I released videos when lawyers were telling me not to. I didn't turn down a press conference if somebody wanted to do it. I tried to address the questions head on because I felt this community owed it, and I think that there is still some distrust there by not releasing this information. What are you trying to hide?
Right. And so now you're going to be stepping into the legislature, and you're going to have some oversight over state officials. How has your experience with the shooting shaped how you view state officials and the way state government operates? And do you think that when you step into the legislature, having that oversight role, that is going to change how you process what officials tell you, and how, when they come present before the committee, how you are going to sorry, I'm losing my train of thought here a little bit, but do you think that it's changing how you are going to handle state officials?
I do. I mean, look, they need to be transparent. They're accountable to the public. They're representing the public, and you need to lay the cards on the table, whatever the situation is. I mean, we need to. There needs to be transparency in it, and that's what I have seen lacking. When you say the government, I will say this: the governor, the lieutenant governor, the Speaker of the House. They moved mountains to get things done in Uvalde. They did. And contrary to what anybody once said, I was on the ground. I saw it. I know that the governor met with each family member individually, every one of them, and offered all kinds of assistance. Some took it, some turned it down. So, but I mean, I think there needs to be transparency and oversight, and the DPS shouldn't have no law enforcement agency should have the discretion to release what they want to release or not when they want to release. Now, if it's an active investigation, you have to do some things. But we've been going on 3 years, and we're still claiming it's active investigation. I mean, let's be realistic. We hadn't even got to destroy or tear down the building where this shooting took place because it's an active investigation scene. So I think there needs to be more transparency and truthfulness and just lay the cards on the table.
All right, moving on to another topic. I'd like to talk about school choice, as I mentioned earlier, is going to be one of the bigger policy arguments within the legislature this coming year. The Senate passed a school choice bill multiple times over the course of several special sessions, and the House never quite got there. At this point, Senator Cook, do you believe that ESAs are inevitable this session?
Well, I try not to entertain hypotheticals because the real world is vexing enough. But I know that voting my district means keeping public money in public schools, and that's the position that I will hold in that chamber.
So does that mean that there's a place for Democrats to work with Dan Patrick to try to find some sort of middle ground on vouchers?
I think that's a question whose answer will unfold as the session progresses. Personally, from my perspective right now, I don't see a middle ground in taking public money out of public schools and putting them into private schools. I'm just not sure. We've seen examples from everywhere from Louisiana to Indiana to Arizona that have had bad outcomes. But if there is a middle ground, I'm willing to look at it and talk about it, and we'll see what comes of it.
And Mr. McLaughlin, the House is where that fight is really taking place. After the primaries, it seems like the governor has the votes likely for his ESAs. And at this point, is it a question of if, or is it a question of what is that bill going to look like?
Well, first, I haven't seen the bill. The last bill that I saw that would have passed, for my district in rural Texas, where everybody screams that rural Texas is going to be hurt. From my understanding, they weren't going to take money from the public education fund away from that. The schools would still get it. But as a business owner that employs people, when I get people that come out of high school and they come to work and you take them back there to give them an application and they can't fill out an application. They graduated high school and they can't read and they can't write, and that we've got a problem. And when and Texas is ranked 43rd in the nation in our education. We're teaching to a STAR test. And I'll tell you from experience, I had a grandson that we had in the dual language academy, supposed to be the elite of the elite, made A's and B's. Now, we're at fault too. We should have been paying more attention, but they passed him to the next grade. Guess what? He couldn't read and he couldn't write. And so we pulled him out and we put him in a private school that's there in Uvalde, and now he's a year ahead of where he should be. But this is what we're doing to these kids. These kids that we're educating today are us tomorrow, and we're not equipping them. And maybe school choice isn't, maybe the voucher system or something, but what we've got's broken, and we've got to do something to fix it. Because, like I said, these kids are us tomorrow. They're going to be sitting in this seat, and that seat, and in your seat in the future. And we need to make sure these kids are equipped and that we're teaching them and we're giving them the tools that they need. And right now, I don't feel that we are.
And another issue that seems to always come up within the legislature, specifically within the Senate, it seems, is this tug of war between the state government and Houston and cities more broadly, but it seems like it's specifically Houston. And that fight seems to happen in the Senate a good bit. And now that you're going to be stepping into the Senate and representing Houston, where do you see your role as those discussions take place?
Well, I should definitely mention that there are more cities than just Houston in my district. We have everything from Southside Place, Bel Air to Humble, so we've got quite a few places. But of course, there's tension between local control and centralized government. I don't think that there's any form of government in our whole nation that does not see some sort of tension between local control and centralized government. And I'm here to live in the tension and to help people figure it out. I'm very grateful that my predecessor is now the mayor of Houston. I think that's an extremely exciting opportunity for everyone to figure out how do we move forward in a way that's best for everybody in the Houston area and Harris County and across the state of Texas. Because my suspicion is there's a lot of good public health outcomes that we can reach if we find how to live in that tension, work together. And I can't speak for anything that's come before me. So that's another exciting thing about being a fresh pair of eyes. I don't have beef. I wasn't here last year. So I get to come in fresh and start new conversations with everyone and see what we can accomplish this session.
And I guess I'll go again to my previous question about how you would stand in contrast with how Senator Whitmire represented the district. Do you think that when Houston is, or when cities are being looked at by the legislature, that you need to be a loud defender of cities at that point, or what is the role of a freshman senator within that?
The role of a freshman senator is to be strategic and serve and be honest. That's the most important thing, is transparency and honesty. And that's exactly what I will do from this seat. I will do what is indicated in every moment to be strategic and achieve good policy that saves lives.
And this week has also been the week for freshman orientation within the legislature. Everybody's in town. Everybody's getting to meet who they're going to be working with for the next 2 years. Has there been any surprises after your first days of meeting? Is there anybody who really stuck out? What are the surprises as you've been meeting new members?
I don't think I've been surprised because I've talked to a bunch of them. I mean, I think it's been very informative. I think we've been given some really good information moving forward. Like I said, I was kind of like those other freshmen. I always thought you started your budget at zero and worked up. I didn't know we went off last year's budget and then see what we need to add to it. But that might be the only surprise. But look, as a freshman, I'm not naive. There's a lot of things I don't know yet, and a lot I've got to learn. And I'm looking forward to it. And like I said, I'm going to look at like I would from a business decision. One thing they keep telling me that's missing in Austin a lot is common sense up here at the legislature. Well, I'm hoping I can bring a little of that back.
I can't think of any surprises from this week. It's been really exciting to get to meet everyone. There's 2 other new incoming senators, and so we've got a little tight group among the 3 of us. Something that really surprised me, I learned last session. So I spent the whole last legislative session just up here as a volunteer, just to learn. I thought I might run for the seat again. So I'd work a couple days a week, be in Austin a couple days a week, and go back home and do organizing a couple days a week and get to 7 days a week. But and what really shocked me, and I don't know if you already knew this, but is you don't have your office assignment necessarily, or you don't have your committee assignments. You don't just start on day one. There's very much this breaking in period where folks are expected to spend a lot of time just getting to know one another and walking around the building and learning where things are and hiring staff and kind of getting oriented. So that was a surprise to me last session, and I was really excited that we get this warming up period. Starting with freshman orientation and then, of course, moving into the actual session. I'm very grateful I don't have to vote for a speaker right now. I got to tell you, the House reps are doing something different than what I have to do. But so this period was a surprise to me as someone who just went from being a regular voter to an elected official. But it seems really cool, and I hope we're going to make good use of it.
Now, Senator Cook, when you were sworn in earlier this year, Mayor Whitmire had moved out of his office, which was the dean's office. He was the most tenured member within the Senate, and so he had a special office, and so that meant that the new dean moved in there. And so you didn't get Senator Whitmire's old office. Where did you end up?
Would you want to move into that office and then move to the extension? I don't think so. No, we are in E1810. Please come visit us, and very, very proud of our office. I always share with people, we ran my first campaign and the first half of my second campaign out of my living room. So to have an office and be able to land somewhere and start really building this, it's very exciting to us. Everything is new, everything is shiny, and I'm very grateful for it.
But as I understand it, that office wasn't in use. It was more of the lieutenant governor's, the office, like extra space that they had.
He did graciously vacate an office for me in the interim, and then we have since moved into the new office. That'll be our spot for session.
So you've kind of had to do 2 moves within this period.
I should really give a shout out to my chief of staff, Allie Smithers, in the room today. The staff does an incredible amount of work. The staff at the Capitol, the staff in my office. So everything from my view has been very smooth and wonderful and exciting. And they've done a ton of work to make that happen. And not just that, but to get our district office up and running as well in this short period, so that we've been providing constituent services from the Houston area, from Harris County. So everything is up and running and moving, and it's very exciting.
You know, one thing that also happens with new House members is determining seniority. And we were talking about this a little bit in the green room. Can you shed some light for everyone in the audience here, how that process works, and what is even the point of all that?
Well, because I'm learning that part of it, but I guess Friday morning we'll go and they'll put a set of ping pong balls with numbers in a jar or a bow or whatever, and you'll reach in there and draw a number, and that's what your seniority number will be. So I'm going to eat cotton candy, like I said, in there, and lick my fingers so they're all sticky, and when I stick them in there, I'll get 5 balls, and I'll choose the lowest number, hopefully. But no, I don't. But I mean, we'll choose our offices that day. We don't get to move into our offices until January the 11th, and we're sworn in on the 14th. So we'll come up here that Saturday, and we'll be a mad dash with 32 of us running around the Capitol trying to get furniture and pictures and things done in an office so that it's up and ready to go by the 14th. So, but come Friday, we'll know where our parking spot's going to be or where our offices are going to be.
What about your desks on the floor? When does that get chosen?
Same thing. It'll be Friday also.
So have you tried scoping out the vacant seats, trying to figure out where you think might be a good spot?
You know, I've looked at the map. Somebody sent me a signal deal with it, and so I screenshot it so I would know where those empty desks were. And so every day I go look and make sure nobody's taken one yet.
All right, so we're getting close to the the Q&A period. So if anybody has any questions, please get ready. We've got a mic there in the center, so please get ready for that. And we also will be taking some questions from online, and somebody here in the room will ask that question on your behalf. So I guess we've got a good number lining up, so maybe we should just jump straight to that now. And so please, if you could introduce yourself briefly and ask a question for members here.
My name is Tim Kaminsky. I'm with the Texas Licensed Child Care Association. You talked about the growth that y'all are seeing in Uvalde and in healthcare. We know how important it is for our first responders and stuff to be able to go to work. One of the challenges is that we've lost a lot of the child care providers in the state over the last 4 years, part of it due to COVID, part of it due to changes in the economy. For the first time ever, both in the Senate and the House, in the interim charges, child care was put in as one of the things to discuss this session. Texas has not been good about putting state money towards child care, and I want to make a distinction between child care and early childhood education. Child care is what supports our workforce. It allows that growth and development. It supports our first responders being able to show up to work. It supports people coming in the Capitol. As new members coming in and not having a lot of background on that and talking about the budget, do you see a place for a discussion about that and how it's going to affect the Texas economy going forward if that does not get addressed this year?
I'm happy to start with that one, and thank you for the question. I mean, I think yes, absolutely. There's a lot of energy right now around workforce development in general, and it's very obvious that childcare is a huge part of that. I do think that some folks, just from conversations that I'm hearing, see a lot of overlap between childcare and early childhood education, and perhaps that overlap is something to explore. And I also suspect, based on conversations that I've been having around this, that it's not a uniform approach, perhaps, across the entire state. There may be different needs within certain different districts, or whether somebody lives somewhere urban or rural or suburban. The answers might not be totally uniform. And I don't have a huge background in this, but I'm very excited to see both red and blue states across the nation are making changes and finding ways to provide either childcare or early childhood education or whatever it is that the workforce needs, and frankly, the children need to be successful. So I'm excited that you asked that, and that we're going to have a chance to look at the budget and see what we can do.
I would agree. We have to come out with a solution that's affordable health care for parents, because right now you have both parents are having to work to make ends meet, and when they have to go and pay child care, they've just lost one of their salaries. So we have to come up with some kind of solution. I don't know the answer to it. I don't know what it'll be, but I would definitely be on board on looking at that and coming up with a solution there.
Great, thank you.
Hello, I'm Leah Isger. My question is, I don't know how are committees assigned, and or if y'all have any choice in what committees and what committees would you choose to be on?
Well, I'm not sure I know how that works yet either, 100%. From what I understand, we get to write 3 choices down on a piece of paper that we would like to, committees we would like to be on. I'm also told that very seldom happens, but we'll see. So I don't know what committee I'll be on. If I had my choice, I'd like to be on natural resources. I think water is going to be a huge fight we're going to be fighting. To my opinion, it's an 800-pound gorilla that's not on the table yet that's coming, but water is going to be huge. I'd like to be on the Ag Commission because I am rural. And the other one, I'd like to be on Homeland Security because as a mayor, I've dealt with the border issue for 10 years.
I love that you asked it that way, Leah. So we have run legislative workshops in our district. We held 8 of them. There's a 9th one coming up because there is so much mystery around what happens inside that building and how the mechanics of it actually move. And we found a lot of interest from my constituents that kind of want to know, want to peek behind the curtain and see how things work and what goes on. So we're making an effort to demystify some of these things. On the Senate side, it is streamlined. It's a little easier. The lieutenant governor assigns the committees. So we have submitted our wish list. I've been very clear with my constituents, with the lieutenant governor, that a public health master's is going to be extremely useful no matter where you put me. Absolutely happy to serve and promote public health on any committee. And we get a lot of committees in the Senate, and I'm hopeful, and I think it's likely that I will be on Health and Human Services. So I'll be very grateful to bring expertise to that committee as well.
Hi, I'm Christina Delgado. I live in Santa Fe, Texas, not New Mexico, just south of Houston. And I come up here to ask this question as a survivor. On May 18th, 2018, we lost 10. 2 of my friends lost their children in the Santa Fe high school shooting. We know that that 17-year-old who had gone through things had access to firearms, which in turn lost us our 10. So we came first. Then 4 years and 6 days to the day after we had passed our 4-year, we call them tragiversaries, we watched as Uvalde went through the same thing we did, with parents standing exactly where I was looking for children amongst children who were injured from gunfire in the art rooms. As representatives of 2 areas of the 2 deadliest mass shootings, we know that access to firearms for youth, for people under 21, is the main reason and the only cause that these acts of violence ended up happening. So my question is, for you two on the stage, is what are you going to do to support us survivors from Santa Fe and Uvalde to make sure and ensure that we are not having 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds young people who are not ready for firearms, to keep them out of their hands and support the families with their refile of raise the age.
I'll go first, and thank you, Christina. And it just takes so much courage and bravery to talk over and over again into microphones about this, so we appreciate you. I'm very proud to have joint authored a bill that would raise the age to purchase, to sell, to distribute these high-capacity assault-style rifles to anybody under the age of 21. So, like, first few moments in office, this is a huge deal, and I'm very proud to be on that bill. There's also a lot of progress that we can make around safe storage, allowing localities to pass safe storage laws, whatever it is. There's different ways to approach this, really leaning into education about safe storage. But guns are very dangerous. They can be used safely, but they can be very dangerous. And I think it's also very important that we pass common sense firearm safety reforms with public health in mind.
Well, I'm open to one thing, but in my generation when I grew up, when I went to high school, if you went to our parking lot in the high school, you would see numerous trucks and cars and gun racks in the car, and guns would be hanging in the racks of those cars, and those cars would be unlocked during school. If we had a fight, we settled it with fists. We didn't go there. Times have changed. I go back to the social issues. We promote violence in everything we do now. We've got to start addressing that first and foremost. And maybe we ought to put gun safety back in our schools and start teaching people the awareness of guns. I mean, I'm an avid gun owner. I have guns. I have a 9-year-old grandson. If I have a gun out at my house and he sees it, he will not touch it because I've taken him out and showed him the dangers of it and so forth. But we also have to start holding people accountable for their actions today. But I mean, changing I'll give you a perfect example. After the Robb School shooting, we had a gang fight in the park. 17 kids in a gang fight. We didn't even know about it. When we found out about it, 2 of them had been shot with a pistol and go to the hospital, and then we go back and find it. Those guns were bought off the street in San Antonio. They weren't bought at a gun store or anything. Then 6 months later at the park, we had another group that was robbing people in the park. One of them had a fully automatic AK-47 and the other one had a fully automatic converted Glock 9mm pistol. Again, bought off the streets. We've got to start holding people accountable for their actions, and we've got to change our criminal laws and start holding people accountable and start educating people on the safety of it. Look, I'm willing to have the conversation on an age change or anything, but I'm not going to change the age unless we're going to address these other issues, because without doing both, it's not going to work, in my opinion. I just don't see it. And like I said, my heart breaks for those families every day, and it breaks for the survivors. You talked about a young lady that has metal in her body now. One of the girls that survived, she's got 6 bullets in her body they can't remove. She will have to live with that all her life. But, I mean, we've got to sit down and start having conversations at a table. And like I said, I don't know the answer. I wished I did. I wished I had the solution or the answer, because there's no easy answer to this. Because on one side, if you do it, you're wrong. If the other side you do it, you're wrong. But we have to be able to sit down at a table and do it. But part of that, I think, has to come back to educating kids again in gun ownership and gun safety and the dangers of it, and becoming more responsible.
Hi, thank you for being here, everybody. My name is Yulissa. I'm with the Coalition of Texans with Disabilities. I would be remiss not to mention also that I was a public school teacher as well in Texas. But my question is directly for Senator, forgive me, I'm not good with names, McLaughlin. For Representative, I'm sorry, Representative McLaughlin. So you have said before that the focus should be on mental health and not gun control. But according to my research and other literature out there, people with mental health issues are 3 times more likely to be the victims of gun violence than perpetrators of it. And so my question to you is, why can't we do both? And if we can't do both, what is your plan to dispel the stigma behind mental health?
Well, I mean, look, when I first started talking about mental health, and I'll use this analogy, and I mean no disrespect to anybody, but most people think of mental health, they look at One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, the old Jack Nicholson movie. And that's not what mental health is today. Mental health it's post-traumatic stress syndrome, depression, schizophrenia, and so forth. And the problem is, we as a society don't have places to put these. When I got involved in this, there was 28 million people in Texas. At that time, there was 1,000 beds available a day for 28 million people in Texas. We have no place. In Uvalde, if we had to find somebody, if we had a person that was there, they got put in jail till we could find a facility. And a lot of times we had to drive to Texarkana or we had to drive to Amarillo because we couldn't find a bed. We couldn't find it. So we've got to start addressing that issue and look, and accept the fact that, mental health is treatable. It's there. When I had kids that their parents would come in and say, we're picking on their kids and the police are picking on them and so forth. And so I would get a record of I would ask for a record of what was going on, and I would look at it. And I had to sit down with the parents and say, look, I don't mean to be rude or bold here, but there's something else going on here besides us picking on your child. And have you ever had a mental health? Oh, yeah, we have. He just doesn't take his medicine. Well, we didn't know that. Had we known that, what I did, I picked up the phone and called the judges and said, if you're going to let him out on probation again or on bond, make him come by there and take his medicine every day. And guess what? That worked. We had some that worked. So again, I don't know the answer to the mental health deal, and I'm not a health care professional on that. I saw it when I got involved when these young people died and there was no help there for them. So I don't know all the answers yet, but I know it's something that we need to address. And like I said, I listened after that politician after politician after politician saying mental health, mental health, mental health, but they didn't do anything. So I hope I've answered your question the best I can.
Thank you.
So my name's Joanne Richards. I know that there is a women's healthcare caucus on the House side. My question is really about the Senate side, because there are several physicians who are senators. And the question that I have then is there a caucus of physicians on the Senate side that can begin to, because they're on both sides of the aisle, to begin to talk about solutions to the problems that we're having in healthcare?
That's a really wonderful question. So Senator Schwertner is a physician. Senator Donna Campbell was a nurse and is a physician. And then, of course, I am now a nurse. So we've got 3 healthcare professionals in the Texas Senate. There's no official caucus that I'm aware of, but I can tell you right now, healthcare professionals feel a camaraderie and a caucus among us. So I'm very excited to get to talk to them about these issues. And senators and House reps can often be in the same caucus, too. So I'll have an opportunity to participate in some of what you're talking about that happens on the House side.
Hi, my name is Elva Mendoza. I'm just a citizen, but a public health social worker. And very quick context, I just moved back from 5 years of living in Spain. During the 5 years I was away, there were, that I'm aware of, over 250 mass shootings in the state of Texas. Those are shootings with 4 or more victims. In that time, guess how many there were in Spain? Absolutely 0. That I'm aware of. So clearly we have a problem. And I just wanted to see if you're aware that the U.S. is such an outlier when it comes to gun violence, that almost every other developed nation has far, far fewer gun homicides than we do. And the difference tends to be strictness of gun laws. And given that we are such an outlier, even though Spain, there are violent video games, violent Hollywood movies, there's a huge hunting culture, there's mental illness, they have those issues. So we know that's not the problem. Given that information, given that the majority of Texans support raising the age to purchase assault-style weapons like the AR-15, given that the survivors of the slaughtered children of your community, and I am so sorry, given that they're begging for the legislature to raise the age, would you consider that? Would you support that?
I can't speak for other countries and that, but I mean, like I said, we have, I don't guess I really have a clear answer to that, to be honest. I don't. I look at countries that you're talking about, Spain and that, it's hard to own a gun in Spain other than a shotgun or something. If you're a hunting advocate or something, I can tell you people in Uvalde, Texas during the immigration deal where we had people on the trains that would get off. We caught pedophiles. We caught rapists. We caught convicted murderers. And guess what? The gun ownership in Uvalde went up because most people now stood in their front yards while their kids were playing there because they wanted a gun because they didn't know what was coming down the street. Like I said, I don't know the answer on the gun deal. I agree with you, we have a problem, but we need to sit at a table and have a consensus, because I don't know that, again, I don't know that changing the age is going to stop the problem. And I don't think that's the only answer to the problem. And that's what everybody keeps saying and throwing out, change the age, change the age, change. Look, I'm not an AR fan. That's not my gun of choice. I'm old fashioned. I use a lever action 30-30 or a bolt action rifle. I'm not an AR guy. They're there. So I don't know the answer, but I'm willing to have a conversation and do it. But I don't think just changing the age is going to solve the problem. I don't.
And this will be our last question.
Hi, my name is Robbie Lopez. My question concerns the border. The Commissioner of the General Land Office recently announced the acquisition of a 1,400-acre ranch in Starr County and offered it to the incoming federal administration for the construction of deportation facilities. The commissioner later extended her offer to include state-owned land elsewhere in Texas for the, quote, critical task of deporting violent, criminal, illegal immigrants from our country. My question is, what actions will you take in the next legislative session following these announcements?
Going to take a lot of actions in the next legislative session. I think the most important thing, and this is where our office always comes from, is how do you center public health? How do you make sure that we end up with the best possible public health outcomes? That can mean for somebody, an individual caught in the systems that are in place, and that can also mean for the state as a whole, for all the folks who are living here, who are working here, who are paying taxes here regardless of their residency status. So I don't live on a border, never have. New to the ledge, very, very eager to learn about this because it's obviously something that's extremely top of mind for a lot of people. So I'm excited to learn from my colleagues who do live, serve, work near the border, to see what's really going on, to understand the interlocking issues that I suspect are happening. There's a lot of multi-layered approaches to a lot of the issues that we're talking about that involve all levels of government. So it's my time to learn right now about what's going on and how best to approach it. But I promise you that I'm going to approach it with the public health and safety of Texans in mind.
I would agree. I mean, I've dealt with the border. I'm 60 miles away from it. We dealt with it every day. Look, I'm not anti-immigration. There's a right way to come into our country and a wrong way to come into our country. And if we're going to let you in our country, if it takes you a little longer to come across the bridge, fine. Let's bring you in. Let's give you a work visa. Let you go get a job instead of being put into what I'll call the slave labor side of it, where you're picked up on a street corner. You go work in a construction job. You get hurt. Guess what? They drop you back off of that same street corner because they don't want to pay your insurance bill or whatever. So, I mean, there's a right way to do it and a wrong way. And I can tell you for a fact that we dealt with criminals. We dealt with deals. I can tell you a lady in Uvalde was keeping her grandkids. An MS-13 gang member was coming to her house. The farmer saw it, and he called law enforcement. The next door neighbor called law enforcement. They got there about the same time he got to the house. He thought the lady called on him, and what he told her was, I know where you live, and I'll be back to get you now. That's what we're having to deal with in our area and different things. Look, all these people that come across the border are not bad people, but there's some, so I'm very much in strengthening our border and shutting the border down. I'm not anti-immigration. You want to come across the border, come across the bridge. Let's get to know who you are. We'll fingerprint you, take your picture, and guess what? We're going to give you a visa and a court date. And if you go get that job, when that court date comes around, guess what? We know right where you are because you got a job and you work and you're contributing to us. And those that don't want to do that, maybe those are the people that we need to deport. So if we have to use state assets to that, I can tell you from a mayor and from having to look at the state deal, it was appalling that our federal government failed our state as much as they did. I can tell you from a healthcare standpoint, which that I would have people in my emergency room, citizens in my community in an emergency room that had been waiting 4 and 5 hours to see a doctor. And here comes the Border Patrol in with 15 or 20 people that say they don't feel good. Nothing physically wrong that you can see anything, but that's one of the deals they say. And guess what? My room full of emergency people just got pushed back another 2 or 3 hours so that these migrants that they just caught, who said they weren't feeling well, got taken care of before our own citizens. It's where our own citizens now become second-class citizens to the migrants, and I have a problem with that. I think that, again, I'm not against it, but we need to take care of our own first, and we need to make sure we tighten our border and secure it.
Thank you.
All right, well, I want to give a big thank you to our panelists today for being here.